Something happened this week that hasn't actually happened before. Not once in all the years that Nigel Farage has been fronting a political party, people inside Reform, senior people, apparently, started briefing journalists about what the party looks like after him. And the journalist they brief writes for the Daily Mail, so you're going to have to take this with a pinch of salt. Yet, when the paper that spent 2 years carrying you starts calling for your replacement, is that a wobble? Or is that the actual scaffolding coming down? And the best part, all of this is happening because of a decision Farage made himself. A decision that, according to those same insiders, the party now openly calls a disaster. So let me show you what they said, because it's pretty remarkable. Now, because journalists started asking questions about this £5 million that he'd kept secret, Farage came up with a plan. He resigned his seat and triggered a by-election in Clacton, his big establishment-defying masterstroke. The people would be his judge. Very dramatic, very expensive, and now, 3 weeks out from polling day, we can measure exactly what that masterstroke brought him.
Well, as I sort of report today, for the very first time, senior people in Reform are starting to think the unthinkable, and they're starting to think about life beyond Nigel Farage and whether or not, sooner rather than later, Reform are going to have to move on from Nigel Farage.
This is Dan Hodges, Mail on Sunday columnist, not exactly the Guardian's man in the press gallery. According to him, the people he's talking to inside Reform aren't worried about the by-election. They're worried about whether the party has a future with Farage in it at all. His words, for the very first time, senior figures are talking about moving on from him sooner rather than later. Now, I need to be careful here because these are anonymous briefings filtered through one columnist, and you could treat them with exactly that much certainty. But here's the thing about anonymous briefings. They don't happen by accident. Somebody senior picked up the phone call to the Daily Mail and started saying, write the obituary.
Well, I mean, within Reform, it's not just a feeling. There's now a general acceptance that that was a disastrous move by Nigel Farage for a number of reasons. I mean, firstly, the nature of how the decision was taken. A number of senior figures within Reform simply just weren't aware of what he was planning. The decision was taken by himself and a very small sort of clique of people around him.
Dan Hodges is going to make sure that it's credible before he goes to the media and starts talking about it, even though he won't give up his sources. Now, according to Hodges, the resignation wasn't just unpopular inside Reform. Senior figures didn't even know it was coming. The decision was taken by Farage and a tiny clique around him. The man who tells you he's fighting for ordinary people against out-of-touch elites didn't consult his own MPs before detonating the party's summer. And then everyone realised that this grand people versus the establishment showdown was actually Nigel Farage versus a man with a bin on his head. And the masterstroke started less looking like Napoleon and more like Alan Partridge.
Would it be terribly rude to stop listening to you and go and speak to somebody else?
But briefings are briefings, so let's talk about what you can actually count. Because while Farage is busy fighting Count Binface in Essex, there was a real election happening. The Greater Manchester mayoral election, the biggest by-election in British history, over 2 million registered voters, and the contest to replace Andy Burnham. Labour's Bev Craig won it hands down, 47% on first preferences, 66% after second preferences were counted. Reform's candidate managed 21%, and Nigel Farage, the leader, the brand, the whole act, couldn't even be bothered to visit Greater Manchester once during the campaign. He skipped the launch, 2 million voters, the biggest by-election the country has ever held, and the man of the people just couldn't fit it in, because he was down in Clacton defending a seat he vacated on purpose. Reform activists were reportedly pulled off the Manchester campaign and sent to Essex to protect him. The party's working class base in Rochdale and Oldham got to watch their resources drive south so the leader can try and win an argument with a bin. And that brings us to this man.
So Nigel, my message is simple. If you are prepared to work together around serious policies, serious reform and serious government, then so are we. Not because it's politically convenient for Restore Britain, not because it's personally easy. After the events of the last 18 months, I would certainly rather not be making this offer. But millions and millions of British people deserve a patriotic government that puts our national interest before any personal differences that you and I may have.
Rupert Lowe, Reform's MP until Farage drove him out 18 months ago. Set up his own party, Restore, and registered it in February. 6 months old, run on a fraction of Reform's money. In Greater Manchester, Restore took 8.7% of the vote, and that put him fourth, ahead of the Conservative Party. I mean, can you believe a party this young managed to beat the Tories in the biggest by-election in British history, and did it largely by carving chunks out of Reform's vote? So when Lowe pops up offering Farage an olive branch, understand what you're actually watching. This isn't a reconciliation. Hodges called it exactly what it is.
What you're seeing is, frankly, is Rupert Lowe basically exploiting Nigel Farage's weakness, exploiting Reform's weakness, and exploiting Reform's fall in the polls and the growing division on the right of British politics.
You don't offer a handshake to a rifle at full strength. You offer it to a man whose poll numbers are sliding, whose donors are under investigation, and whose own party is briefing the Mail about his exit. It's the political equivalent of asking if you could have his stuff when he's gone, but with a press release. Now, obviously, I'm covering every twist of this until the Clacton result in August, so please make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already, and memberships are open if you can support the channel that way too. Now, Reform's answer to all of this is that it's a media pylon. Ah, poor Nigel, bullied by the mean journalist over his private finances, all those hurty words. And Hodges got asked about that directly too. Listeners messaged in accusing him of a vendetta.
What would you say to those listeners who seem to be feeling that Nigel is a victim here of a kind of bad, nasty press?
Well, up to, I mean, I can only speak for myself. Up to a few weeks ago, I was getting told exactly the same thing about how I was treating Keir Starmer. Before that,
me too, Dan. Me too.
Exactly the same criticism about how I was treating Rishi Sunak. Before that, how I was treating Liz Truss and Boris. I mean, that comes with the territory. I think, but the point is, with the greatest respect to the people ringing in, I'm not sure they're all ringing in, just on their own bat. I mean, this is basically Reform's coordinated response to this.
Now, his answer is probably the one that should worry Reform the most. He pointed out that he got identical complaints when he was going after Starmer and Sunak and Truss and Johnson. The accusation that follows the scrutiny, whoever's under it. And then the line that actually matters, the questions keep coming because nobody in Reform can answer them. Weeks of interviews across every outlet, and not one senior figure has produced a straight, credible account of the £5 million. Obviously, I've covered this on this channel, and to be fair, it's not really the journalist talking about the money that's keeping the story alive. It's the fact that it's being kept alive by an absence of a credible answer. So what was the by-election for? Well, it was meant to draw a line underneath the Harburn story, and instead it put it on a rolling 3-week billboard. The party essentially skipped the biggest by-election in British history to service one-man psychodrama. The exile that they cast out is eating their vote and publicly measuring the curtains, and the friendliest press Reform's ever had is now printing succession speculation from inside the tent. Farage will probably still win in Clacton on August the 13th. He'll stand on stage and declare a victory over a man with a bin on his head and call it vindication. But the people who actually run his party have already told the Daily Mail what they think it is. And if the Commissioner's verdict goes the way everyone's expecting it to, he may have to run this whole stunt again with a party that's no longer sure it wants him to. And did he accidentally slip in by telling us his exact plan for the by-election itself? Well, to find that out, you need to watch the video that's on screen now. Thanks for watching, don't forget to hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.